Hi, today we're going to be going over the 22 greatest horror movies of all times. That was scary. Hi, today we're going to be covering the 22 greatest horror movies of all times. I'm Foxy Sellers. If you're one of those people that fancies fables, fiction, film, tall tales, and high adventure, you are definitely in the right place. As we lead into the Halloween holiday season, I'm going to produce a whole bunch of films that are related to this specific genre. So if you would, click subscribe, click the notifications. That way you'll get chimed into each one of these as they come. I'll tell you, horror is a lot of fun for me. I grew up watching all kinds of fun horror movies. I love scaring the shit out of people. Now, the films that I've included on this list, of course, it's my list, so it's my opinion. So you're not necessarily going to agree. But in my opinion, these are, and some of this is undeniable, they're milestones. Some of them are cult classics. Some of them are cultural sensations or cinematic breakthroughs, or they changed what our understanding was of horror films at the time. Most of these left an impact on all audiences. All of them left an impact on me. So let's get into the 22 greatest horror films of all times. Number 22 is The Witchfinder General from 1968 by the upcoming director Michael Reeves. Unfortunately, he passed at a very young age, and we didn't get to see more of his films, but this one was unique at the time. It was also very unique for Vincent Price. Vincent Price was always very, very theatrical. Michael Reeves had one specific note for him, and he wanted to kind of dial it down, make it a bit more realistic, less theatrical, and this is what we got.
You will each be tied in a prescribed fashion and cast into the moat. Should you then sink, we will know that your confessions are false. If, on the other hand, you are seen to swim or float, then your confessions of witchcraft are proven beyond a doubt.
Now, I found when I first saw this movie, it was steeped in realism. It was just an authentic piece of cinema.
In the sight of God, and you will be withdrawn from the water and hanged by the neck until you are dead.
And it's disappointing that Michael Reeves didn't get to do more movies because there's just a lot of little things you'll notice when you see this movie. So, the movie makes the list because A, I thought it was just a really great movie. I don't know how scary you'd consider it, except for you would consider the concept of how ignorant and how influential people at the time can manipulate it for their own financial benefit. And in reaping that benefit, people need to die. These witch hunts that they went on, the concept is so scary that somebody has so much power over you. Number 21 is Nightmare on Elm Street from 1983. This is the great Wes Craven movie, and this is one of the classic, 70s, 80s slasher films that had the iconic slasher serial killer. You go from Texas Chainsaw Massacre's Leatherface to Halloween's Michael Myers, and then you got Friday the 13th's Jason Voorhees. Freddy Krueger in Nightmare on Elm Street, of all of those, is the most unique and the most creative of those. By way of nightmares, he can exact his vengeance on his killers by way of nightmare. It's the most clever of all of them. And that's why it stands out. And to boot, it's a really great movie. Number 20 is The Mask of Red Death from 1964. This is Roger Corman's, I believe, to be his best movie. He's done other really great films, entertaining. This one is a bit more Shakespearean compared to some of his other outings.
Somewhere in the human mind, my dear Francesca, is the key to our existence. My ancestors tried to find it. To open the door that separates us from our Creator.
This one has just, like, artistically speaking, it has bold colors and it's surreal imagery that was just like unusual for horror films for its time. But it did have an atmosphere to it that was just, unlike anything else that it was doing. And I do feel that it stole a little bit from Bergman's Seventh Seal. It did have kind of that element of the death character that him being the plague comes to this village. And I'm moved in a way that's not necessarily horrific, but more like it's just a really great movie. Number 19 is Twins of Evil from 1971. This is one of the probably the greatest Hammer horror film ever. And this one really delves into the sexual exploitation of horror films of the time. And this one does it well. Like it doesn't feel like it's a gimmick. It's more properly used and impactful.
The devil has sent me, twins of evil.
And this one stars Peter Cushing. It's a mix of like vampires and like a gothic atmosphere that's just really, really appealing to cult fans of this genre. And I'll also add too, because I'm like, I don't want to take up another spot for other Hammer horror films because they are kind of a guilty pleasure. They have their place in the horror universe. But The Vampire Lovers, I always felt was second to this from 1970, and that's another one that's just like that one. That one's got Ingrid Pitt. I don't have any Ingrid Pitt movies on this list, so I wanted to have a mention for her, especially when it comes to the Hammer horror films. Number 18 is The Bad Seed from 1956, which this one I didn't discover until much later in my life. It's about a child murderer. And that's kind of bananas if you think about from 1956. And the moment I started watching this and realizing as things were escalating in this, I was like, this is aggressive for 1956.
I believe he did it. I was fooling before, but now I believe you kill him. You kill that little boy with his shoes.
You've got them hid. But you'd better get them and bring them back here. Right ahead of me!
Is Roy saying to you?
No.
I heard you yelling, bring them back here.
He said he had my shoes.
I got nobody's shoes, Miss Penmore.
Nominated for several Oscars at the time, and it really kind of paved the way for these psychological domestic horror films that even though you didn't see that many of them, this was the first one, and this one was mind-blowing. Number 17 is Friday the 13th Part 2, and I'm going to cheat a little bit here because it really was... It's impossible to include more than one of any type of serial of these, and I didn't want to not do that for Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th probably has three really great, guilty pleasures, if they were, but still very scary hardcore slasher films. 2 was the one that I first saw as a kid, and I had nightmares. Like I was just like, oh my God, they slit that guy's throat, and then like I couldn't sleep that night. It was troublesome. I was probably 8 years old, and then second to that would be probably Friday the 13th Part 7, which I saw in the theater. And I remember going to it was like kind of an inner city area that I had seen it in, and the theater was packed, and people are yelling, and they're rooting for that guy to die and this girl to live, and like, don't go in there. Like, it was just bananas, and it was one of my favorite theater going experiences. And then finally, Friday the 13th, the final chapter, the fourth one. That one is an excellent one too. These are the three I wanted to include as number 17. Number 16 is The Exorcist from 1973 by the great William Friedkins. And he did some unbelievable movies like right out of the gate for himself. This being, I think, the second one. Yeah, and he followed this up with The Sorcerer, which is another great movie. That it's underrated for whatever reason. But, all the movies he was doing at the beginning of his career were stunning. And this one is like no exception. This put like demon possessions on the map as far as like frightening subject matter for people to, experience in the cinema. This is often called one of the scariest movies of all times. I tend to agree from a certain extent, because the suspense of it does build. So if you have a great imagination, it's probably a scarier movie for you than for others. And it shocked audiences so badly that theaters reported people like fainting and people walking out, and it was even banned in some areas. Yet it became such a massive hit, and this, like, anytime a horror movie earns Oscars, I mean, this one had 10 Oscar nominations, which is crazy. One of the first that was nominated for Best Picture. And this gives horror really a seat at the table of being serious cinema. And it was. This was a serious film. Number 15 was Rosemary's Baby from 1968. And this is the precursor to what was so great about The Exorcist that came right before this on this list. Roman Polanski's Rosemary's Baby was just something that no one had seen before. And the amazing thing about this, and this is what like Hitchcock's used and Spielberg uses in Jaws, is like, you don't see anything. There's no demons. There's no Satan. There's like, and I don't want to give for those of you that have not seen the movie, I don't want to give anything away, but there's like no real information that provides you whether or not it is this or it's that. Like, it's, you have her suspicions and you see this film through her eyes, and you're not sure whether or not she's delusional or if like it's really a demon baby. So, it has that element to it, but it's, by God, it's the spookiest shit to think that your baby might actually be Satan. Number 14 is X from 2022. This is probably the most modern film on the list so far. And this was T. West's 1970s kind of grindhouse horror feel. It starred Mia Goth. I feel like this movie put her on the map. And it's brutal. It's stylish as hell. And it was praised for like mixing slasher type thrills with like thoughtful filmmaking at the same time. It does have elements of Texas Chainsaw Massacre as far as its style. It also has Psycho elements to it, but then it also has kind of like a modern slasher feel to it as well. Number 13 is Christine from 1983. This is the first of the John Carpenter films, the great horror master John Carpenter, who also wrote the music for his films as well. And if you've seen any of the great John Carpenter movies, the music is a whole nother character. And it showed you like someone else could have directed some of these movies and he could have just been the composer, and he would have been by itself an unbelievable composer who created these iconic themes for horror films. And it wasn't just that. He actually directed it, and he wrote some of these scripts, and he was involved with the casting and putting all these things together. So like he was a Renaissance man in the horror film industry. Christine being, I believe, to be one of the better Stephen King films to show up on this list. There's a unbelievably long catalog of Stephen King movies. This one just happens to be one that really resonated with me. I had read the book. I'm actually, I have to confess, I'm not a huge Stephen King fan as far as his writing styles. I love his stories. He writes unbelievable stories, but I don't sit and read Stephen King books. I did complete this book, and I found it to be one of the better books. I had started some of the other books and finished some of them, and I didn't love them, but I loved this book, and I loved this movie. This is one of my favorite Stephen King movies. Number 12 is The Ring from 2002. And just a decade before it, they had the original Ring. I believe it was a Japanese film with the story of this cursed videotape. I just happen to like this one better, just because I had seen this one first. So it kind of has a leg up in that scenario. Just the image of Samara crawling out of the television became this iconic image. And I remember when it first happened too. Like, bear in mind, sometimes too, you can see a movie and whatever the timing is or the frame of mind when you see it, it has an impact on it, and then it changes it, or it carries over to every other time you see it after that. So, you know, a lot of these movies that people see when they're younger, or they see, I didn't see this when I was younger, but I'm just using that as an example, of course. But you can carry over that experience every single time you see it, which lends a lot to its greatness. The imagery of this is impactful. All right, before we get into the top 11 of the 22, I'd like to do quick 11 honorable mentions. I realize that makes it 33, but the list was 22, and then I just pushed the limits. Here we go. So these aren't in any particular order. The first one being You Won't Be Alone from 2022. It Follows from 2014. The Dead Zone from 1983. Let Me In from 2010. Flowers in the Attic from 1987. Seventh Seal, which is the Ingmar Bergman movie, which stars Max von Sydow. I also want to add Invasion of the Body Snatchers from 1956. There's several versions of this. I just happen to like the original. Then there's The Witch, the Robert Eggers movie from 2015. Oh, and here's another recent movie, which is The Late Night with the Devil from 2023. And from the same year, I'll include Strange Darling, which, you know, it has a Quentin Tarantino feel to it. And then the last one I want to include in my honorable mentions is The Sixth Sense from 1999. This is more mainstream, but I want to include this. Okay, now we're into our top 11. This is going to be the first of the old classic monster movies. This is The Bride of Frankenstein from 1935. I could have very well also included Frankenstein, the one that came before it, but you know, between the two of them, and I flip-flop back and forth between them, but like I think I like this one better for some of its iconic shots and scenes. And you know, the first one was just so minimal and it's great and it's tight. The second one has more to it. It's more robust and it really painted all the picture for all of the Frankenstein movies that came after it. And of course, it's still Boris Karloff as the monster. You know, for me personally, with the old Universal monster movies, Frankenstein was always my favorite. I was not a big fan of the Dracula movies. You know, and of course, you know, the vampire movies, there's so many that are done well that, you know, you're going to see some of these on the list. But when it comes to the subject material, the Frankenstein films were the ones that were my favorite. And that's especially from the Universal monster period. Number 10 is going to be another John Carpenter film, The Thing from 1982. This one stars Kurt Russell, and it combines paranoia and isolationism, and it was really groundbreaking, and its special effects, as much as they probably didn't spend that much money, it was so well executed that you suspended disbelief of the material that was in front of you. You know, and as the years go on, this one was critically panned, and it, you know, its release is now revered. It's one of those masterpieces of paranoia and practical effects, and it is one of the great sci-fi horror movies of all times. Number 9 is Evil Dead 2 from 1987. I could have included Army of Darkness, but this one's a little scarier, and this one kind of did some things that were, you know, it took the Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2. Evil Dead 2 is just like kind of a remake of the first one. So this one, it does all the things that the other one didn't do, and it had a better budget, and it was very clever. And this one's, you know, much, much funnier in its execution. And this is really where like Ash's origin is, you know, all the things that you know about Ash from all the later movies, they came from this. Bruce Campbell, he turned gore into a slapstick comedy, and he did it in a way that didn't like erode the horror aspect of it. It's outrageous in style and inventive. And the camera shots, like Sam Raimi, like he became this great horror director and director of all types of genre after that. But like this one showcases like how excellent he was at the photography and his skill at the, you know, these unique techniques that he was applying. I want to call it splatter comedy horror. That's with taking gore and slapstick and turning it into some sort of phenomena. And that's what this was. Number 8 is Get Out from 2017. This is Jordan Peele's horror that it's quietly spooky in its paralyzing application. Like you feel paralyzed. You feel like, I don't want to give too much away, but it's one of those things where you're trying to figure out what is going on in this place that this young man has been taken to by his girlfriend, and you feel helpless. And that's horrific in itself too. Like, all of these horror movies, they implement some sort of different technique of what's scary about this and being paralyzed. You ever have you ever had one of those dreams where, a nightmare or whatnot, and you wake up in the middle of the night and you feel like someone's standing over you, but you're still in your dream and you're trying to no, get away. And you're like so frozen not in just horror, but like your body can't move because you're in that dream. That's what this movie feels like. And that's fucking spooky. Number 7 is the great Halloween from 1978. Of course, another John Carpenter film. This is the third one on the list. Jamie Lee Curtis, has, I don't know if it's her debut, but it felt like her debut. And this is a breakout role for her. And she faced off against the great Michael Myers. So we've now covered 3 out of the great 4 iconic slasher icons. And, the score by Carpenter is it's so haunting. It's lean, it's tight, it's suspenseful. And the storytelling it's simple too, but like the blueprint was just absolutely influential for every horror, director after that. Number 6 is Alien. Ridley Scott's 1979 sci-fi / horror movie. And it's not what people expected, going into it. It was released right in the middle of that golden age of space operas, because they had done Star Wars very recently. And then they, Star Trek was rolling, and then they had the Flash Gordon movie that came out. And so this is right in the middle of it, but this is gritty space, futuristic, and the realism is undeniable. So when you see a creature that kind of comes out of the shadows, that's as scary as this is, it's pretty amazing. Number 5 is The Conjuring from 2013. And the reason this movie is as high as it is on the list is because this might be one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. I was so petrified for this family and what they were going through, and just the idea, some people aren't as afraid by demons or the netherworldly type demonic characters. They bother me a bit. And this struck a chord, it hit a nerve that was quite impactful for me. And I do feel like this was the movie that revitalized the supernatural type horror movies. Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga, they played real life characters of the Warren couple. These are real life paranormal investigators. It deviates drastically from some of the true stories that they had to deal with. And if you've ever seen interviews with them, one of the things they say is, most of the cases they went on were bullshit. So the ones that they had where they either couldn't explain what was going on or holy shit, something happened and that was real. Those cases seem to be so interesting. And I would love to see something a little more realistic, that tells the story of the Warrens in the future someday. I've seen some documentaries and they're horrifying in their concept alone, but this one took it to a level that was just, it's clearly you have to suspend disbelief, but it's some scary shit. Number 4 is Psycho from 1960, the great Alfred Hitchcock movie. There's not a lot that needs to be said about this. I've said, I don't know how many different takes about this on other videos that I've made because I love Alfred Hitchcock so much, but this is the great original horror movie. And it was taken from Ed Gwynn, who is the I think he was Minnesota area, somewhere around there. He'd had some weird relationship with his mother, and he was collecting dead bodies and was taxidermying them in his house. And he was making, and even the Texas Chainsaw Massacre takes from this, but the character, or excuse me, the real life character of Ed Gwynn was an influence for Norman Bates in Psycho. And that's really kind of what, makes this so scary, is there's some realism to it, which leads us right into number 3, which is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1974. It's unfortunate that this isn't recognized as being the true source of the slasher films. I know John Carpenter's Michael Myers in Halloween is that's attributed to it. And I don't know why this one isn't. Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre really is the first of the main slasher movies. And the thing about this is an art piece. If you watch it, the shots, just the suspense, the timing of everything, the lack of visuals in a shot, which adds to your own creativity. It's a friggin' masterpiece. And I absolutely love this movie. And it should be recognized for its greatness on many levels. That's why it's number 3 on this list. Number 2 is The Shining from 1980. This is going to be my top Stephen King story that's on the list. And much of this is attributed to Stanley Kubrick's design. It's a psychological horror movie. Jack Nicholson is just, the descent into madness is just, it's heartbreaking. And the performance that is captured by him and Shelley Duvall is like, it's slow and unraveling, and the isolation and the terror that you feel with them being away in this place, up in the mountains of this overlook hotel, and the twins, and just, the element of mystery that's involved with kind of like the folklore of things that happened at this hotel really add to the atmosphere of it. It's truly, take away the aspect of horror. This is just a masterpiece in filmmaking. And then you add the element of the horror genre to it, and you're like, wow, this is great.
Here's Johnny.
And my number 1 greatest horror movie of all time, and this is going to surprise a lot of people, but it's The Blair Witch Project from 1999. And this goes back, I had mentioned earlier about the element of when you saw it and the impact it had. I think the marketing of this film is what made this so great leading into it, because people thought this really happened. This was the first of the found footage films where you're like, holy shit, this is just, somebody made this on the go as this was happening to them. So it added a realistic element to it. And it worked, because I bought it, and, I found out very soon after. I'm like, oh, that wasn't real. Oh, like it felt real. Holy crap. And you never saw the witch. You never saw any of the things that are antagonizing them or tormenting them in the woods. It just was like, what the fuck is going on? And it was so scary to experience that with them. And then, one of the guys disappears, and you're like, well, what happened to him? Like, they don't know. And there's like, they're crying in this. And, I do believe that the directors, Daniel Merrick and Eduardo Sanchez, I believe that they put the actors through a tumultuous time, because they were like sleep deprived, and they were, food deprived, and they literally were stuck out in the woods filming this on their own. And then they're just taking whatever footage they could use from this. It added to the acting, because their acting was pretty impressive. I bought it. So, this might not be everybody else's number 1, but for me, it was the scariest movie I had ever seen when I saw this. And I still go back and watch this, and I'm like, wow, this is really, it's a masterpiece. And the concept was copied again and again, this found footage, whether it was Paranormal Activity or VHS or Cloverfield or the Taking of Deborah Logan. The movie created a subgenre within horror that has just been beaten to hell These are the first ones to do it. And I think this is the one that did it the best. In closing, these are the films, not just for me, but for audiences in general, that scared the shit out of us. And then also challenged the conventions and broke barriers and left a legacy that even to this day, not just in the horror genre, but in the film industry, is undeniable. And if history has taught us anything at all, it's that horror never dies. I want to thank you for watching. I'm Foxy Sellers. If you would, click the like, click subscribe. I got a whole bunch more of the horror coming out just for this holiday season. And if you click the notification, you'll get keyed into those just as well. Thanks.